All right, let's just get right into it. Today on the Earn It All podcast, we have Mr. Jon Hamilton. Thank you for joining us, my man.
Pleasure's all mine, man.
Yeah, let's do a little quick bio. I'm just going to read here, and then we'll get into your story because we've been talking offline already, just chopping it up. We're like, shit, we better hit record, you know? But Jon, you are a former Green Beret, member of the Night Stalker Squadron, if you will. Is that what you call it?
Regiment. Yeah.
Regiment. Okay. You have 10 years of special operations experience, including deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, Eastern Europe. Now have a training company called Infinite Grit, which I was checking out this morning. Looks super cool. Also an avid outdoorsman, soon to be father. Congratulations. Very cool.
Appreciate you. Yeah.
Husband. And one of my favorite things you put on here is a lifelong learner. Adam and I always say that we are always forever students, you know, and it's a big point of us doing this. You know, we get to learn from each other and just talk and try to figure shit out.
100%, man.
So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. Obviously, we talked offline a little bit. Been watching you guys for a couple of years now. Love what you do. Love what you represent. So it's an honor to be here.
Dude, awesome, appreciate it. Yeah. We were just talking. Let's get right back into what we were talking about because that was super cool. We were just talking about drones and some of your experience in the Army. So paint the picture, if you would, for me and for people listening, like Green Beret and then the Night Stalker Regiment. Like what's going on there and how'd you get into the Army?
Yeah. So I always wanted to join the military. Ended up, it's kind of a long story there, but a buddy I played football with in high school, my mom ended up marrying his dad, which is like a whole stepbrother situation.
Okay.
But my stepdad, who he became, was a former Green Beret. So he planted the seed. You know, I looked at Marines. He threw it away. He's like, "Nah, you're going Army." So always wanted to go Army and wanted to go Special Forces. So ended up enlisting as EOD originally. I was just young, dumb, hurt locker got me. So
sure.
Luckily failed out of that. Clawed my way into the 160th, which is the Special Operations Aviation Regiment. They support a lot of, Green Berets, Rangers, SEALs, things like that. They're the air taxi service for those guys. And in particular to drones, I was an airframe guy, trained, and then got to the 160th and surprise, ended up starting up this detachment or unit within the 160th where they started fielding drones. So I was actually a plank holder in that unit.
Okay.
And they fielded the MQ-1 Charlie, which is the Gray Eagle, 58-foot wingspan, carries 4 Hellfires. Pretty cool drone.
Dang, 58-foot wingspan?
Yeah, so it's pretty big.
That's a big plane.
Yeah.
Dang. So yeah, let's talk about drones a little bit because I worked on fighter jets for a long time, like 14 years. I did F-14, F-18, F-22, and F-35s. He was all Harriers.
All Harrier.
Yeah, all Harrier guy. So neither one of us have worked on drones, but I'm very familiar. And if people don't know what airframe means, you can tell them in your own words if you want, but essentially the structure, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So like when we say airframe, like it's, it's the doors, it's the skin, it's if it has stealth, it's like whatever, if the lights break, like all the things that are attached to the frame of the structure of the aircraft, which is cool. So what's it like working on a drone? Because, we always had to be cautious of going in the cockpit, the ejection seat, don't step on this, don't step on that. And when I look at that, like there's no cockpit, right?
No.
It's just a flying hot dog.
Yeah, there's a portion that has like all of the important stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like the cockpit, but honestly, it's pretty easy to work on them. They're smaller. You get a ladder. You can go up there, do all the engine stuff. You can have it broken down and put it back together in a couple hours.
Yeah.
Actually, when I got to the unit, there was like nobody there. And there was 5 of us guys that were even in the maintenance platoon. And there was like a couple boxes off to the side. And they're like, yeah, those are the aircraft. We're like, what?
Put them together.
Exactly.
No kidding.
So we literally had to build the aircraft for the first time. But you kind of start doing it.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, but it's nothing like fixed wing or manned aircraft. It's much more simple to work off of. And a lot of times you're just using the logbook and going through step by step. So I always say like, it's funny thinking back to my time working as a mechanic on drones, because I would say I'm pretty proficient at it. Learned my job and honed my skill set, but I'm still like the world's worst mechanic when it comes to automobiles.
It's funny you mentioned that about, probably being really simple to work on. Thinking about the Harrier, because that's the platform that I know. Almost everything about that is to support the cockpit and to support the pilot.
Yeah.
Like it's life support. Or not life support, but you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. It's to support the human being that's in there, right? Even all the way to the avionics stuff. It's like all the avionics stuff could have just been a sensor and a fucking cloud storage somewhere. But no, it's got to be a big box and like all this stuff because it's supporting the person in the cockpit. So I never really thought of it like that. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's really neat because I was going to say something similar.
Yeah.
Like any fighter jet, especially, which is my background, it's really built around keeping that human alive. You know, the life support system is the breathing. It's the, you know, being able to put up with the G-forces with their suits, or just having that space carved out to put a human body in an ejection seat, and then the glass, all the screens and all the stuff. And if you don't have to have that, I'm like, man, the sky has got to be kind of like the limit because it's an engine. And then avionics and weapons.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of it, right?
That's it. Super
cool.
Simple.
Yeah.
Obviously like a pretty beefed up wingspan. So it can fly and glide for a long time. So yeah, they're very simple, but very effective. So we were talking offline, like that is the future of warfare right there. Obviously there's always going to be fighters and manned aircraft. But as it gets more advanced, and you can deliver these payloads on target with a system where you don't have to have, you know, a trained pilot up there. It becomes a lot more effective. And I think a lot of countries will move to it.
Yeah.
Especially some of these like quadcopter fucking drones and stuff that you see out there, like, you know, China doing their drone displays in the sky and stuff. And it's like, how would you ever defend against something like that? You know, like
electronic.
And there's electronic, but it's like, man, you got a swarm of 1,000 drones carrying fucking C4. And it's like, that's a nightmare scenario for, you know, I used to do, I did some security contracting after I got out and worked with, you know, individual clients and stuff like that. And it's like thinking about that as a potential threat is literally a nightmare scenario.
Oh yeah.
So there's nothing you could do about it.
Did you see the other day? Was it Venezuela? They tried to get him with drones.
Yeah, Maduro.
Did you see that? They tried to get Maduro. There was 2 drones. He was giving a speech to a couple hundred soldiers. It was kind of some sort of like ceremony. Everyone's dressed up all nice, and he's elevated, you know, talking to everybody. And I guess 2 drones with C4 like came at him. And I guess they were able, shows like how they're kind of ready to counter this a little bit. I guess they were able to knock one off course with some sort of EMP gun or something.
Yeah.
And then the other one flew into like a building. But then right after that, I thought it was really interesting. His Secret Service equivalent pulled out, had like these big, looked like folded shields with like a black cloth on them.
Wow.
And I'm assuming it's probably some mix of like Kevlar or something, you know, but they had those suckers out pretty fast.
Probably. Like,
it's pretty cool.
It probably is some sort of like stealth kind of thing.
Could be, yeah.
To like mess up the, you know, GPS or something on it.
That's a good point.
Really
if the sensors are trying to get a target, maybe you put that up and it's like there's nothing there.
Yeah. Or a lot of them are coming with thermal sensors.
Yeah.
So if you put a cloth up, you block out the heat. Yeah. So
that's a good point.
I think a lot of stuff is coming out of what we're seeing in Ukraine. Like obviously that's one of the big things that's making the Ukrainian military so effective is the implementation of those small, easy to mass produce, can carry a payload drones.
Right.
And like you said, there are guns and technology coming out where you can disable those drones flying. Some of them up to like 150 drones at a time.
I was reading about that. Yeah.
But I think as it progresses, it's always going to be like, who's outsmarting the newest technology? What are we implementing? How fast are we getting, you know, payloads on target? How low can you fly? You know, some of these drones, like the DJI FPV drone that you can go buy for $900, thing can fly like 80 miles an hour if you take off all the safeties and everything. So
yeah, there was a guy on Instagram just not too long ago, and he was like, "Oh, you didn't know drones could fly in the water?" And he flew his drone down in the water. And he flew back out of the water, and he flew down in the water, and
how scary is that?
And it's like, oh my god!
It's crazy.
Yeah, even like the big drones like that you worked on, I can even see those becoming just payload carriers of smaller drones, because like we were talking, you mentioned it and you're spot on, like that's the future of aviation warfare. Like my wife is a subject matter expert on the F-35 right now. Wow. And like she knows basically everything about it. And so this conversation is going on a lot, because Elon will say something about unmanned aircraft, or like there's a lot of shit going around with unmanned aircraft, and we have this. And I have another friend that's working on the basically, I'll get the wrong word, but it's like basically the supersonic interceptor and offensive vehicles for other supersonic, weapons.
I think it's hypersonic.
Yeah, hypersonic.
Yeah.
I was going to say scramjet, but I was a little off of that. But long story short, these are going to be the last manned jets. Like, is why we don't need a human up there.
Right.
I can make the case a little bit where like a human's probably going to fight a little harder because there's, like you got that drive and that emotion and stuff in it, and you'll fight literally until the death. But you can theoretically program a computer to do that too.
Yeah. But also think of the cost of all the stuff to keep the pilot alive. Now you don't have that. Now instead of sending, a squadron of 5 jets, you send 50 drones.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're all, it's like, they're one-time use. It's like,
but how much more cost effective? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think the landscape is going to be, everyone talks about like the rate at which technology continues to advance.
Yeah.
And I think right now with the implementation of AI and the ease of access with AI over the last year since it's really been implemented, is just going to dramatically increase the speed. And I think 10, 15 years down the road, everything we know today is going to be so obsolete because it's going to be a completely different space.
I'm not looking forward to it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I just saw yesterday that they're saying, I forget when, but it's very soon, Teslas are going to start to be integrated with their Grok AI. So you could be driving around and just talking to your AI about whatever, have it drive, have it take you places, check stuff on the car, like just, I don't know, do your homework, like just, and that's, I've mentioned that because that is absolutely going into these drones and into these planes. And especially, dude, we haven't even touched the surface on quantum computing yet. Like as these things start to merge and come together, like you're right. Like everything today is going to be obsolete in the very short future. It's not like we have to look back to like 1900 with the Model T car and laugh at that because of what we have now. We're going to have what we have now, and in probably 2 years, laugh at what we have now.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's crazy.
Quantum computing is what really scares me. That's like,
that's the point where everything that's currently on the grid and on the internet, like none of it matters anymore.
Yeah.
Passwords don't matter. Fucking firewalls don't matter. Like it's just, we kind of go back to we're going back to a stone age, but it's like a technological stone age to where, well, now it's just quantum computing everywhere. It's scary. I don't even want to think about it. Send the EMPs.
Yeah.
Send the fucking,
We need
Send
one.
the nukes.
We need a reset.
I mean, imagine a future where like, if we walk around, if we carry a weapon, which I basically do everywhere, like at some point, imagine if we're carrying little EMP freaking gun, because if this becomes such a thing where everyone can buy these crazy drones and you can hide them from the FAA, and who knows where this is going to go.
Right.
Skynet's probably the answer. It'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk about, I want to know about a Green Beret too. So there's been Green Berets in the news recently and, a lot going on, but, we've got a lot of friends that are Navy SEALs and, of that special operations community. So tell us about your experience getting into that.
Yeah, man. So did a couple years in the 160th.
That was first?
That was first,
okay.
Yeah. So luckily got a couple deployments. On my second deployment to Iraq, I knew I wanted to go special forces. I was kind of like kicking the ball down the road of going to selection. We ended up supporting SFODA, so Operational Detachment Alpha, just a team who was defending this oil refinery from ISIS at the time. This was 2014, so ISIS was kind of making reclaiming some territory in Iraq. And I was just watching like the ISR feed, through our drones of these dudes just getting hit every single night. And then like they would come on the base and I would talk to them. They were kind of mentoring me up. So after that trip, I was like, you know what? I'm going to selection as soon as I can. Yeah. So went to selection. It's a 21-day course. You do like physical events, you do land navigation, and then team week where you just carry heavy shit with your buddies.
Sure. That's what is RASP? Is that
RASP is
with
for the Ranger Regiment.
Oh, okay,
so
never mind.
to get
I'm
into the
thinking of something
75th,
different.
yeah. So
Okay.
this is a 3-week course, and then if you get selected at the end, then you go to the Q course, the Special Forces Qualification course, which is about 2 years long, has a bunch of different phases where you learn all the basics of the skill set.
Yeah.
After that period, you learn a language, and then you go to your team, and that's where the real work starts. So SF teams were originally created to focus on what's called unconventional warfare, to essentially insert behind enemy lines, train up a militia force or train up a resistance force, and then partner and working by, with, and through that resistance force, eventually overthrow the occupying power or the occupying government. So the essence of a Green Beret is to be a force multiplier. You take a small team, link up with a militia, a host nation's partner force, whatever, and you use the training that you have to train them and lead them and help conduct operations.
Okay, cool. So how does a Green Beret and a Ranger, how do they play together, or what's the difference there?
A Ranger is all direct action focused, majority direct action focused. They do some reconnaissance and things like that, where Special Forces still does do direct action, but that is like the Ranger's sole purpose in life, is to do direct action. So if I was going to hit a building or a village or whatever, and I was going to do it unilaterally, so just using American forces, I would probably send in Ranger Regiment or a Ranger Battalion or company who is very skilled at those large-scale direct action missions, as opposed to an SF ODA, which is only 12 guys and primarily work with a partner force. So like in Afghanistan, we would go out on missions where we have our 12, team members, a couple American support personnel, so about 20 Americans on the ground, and then anywhere from 60 to 80 Afghans. And then we would lead them through that mission.
Dang. Okay. Yeah, that's a good picture to paint. Thank you. So how was it when you get in? So you get selected and you get out there and you start going and you're working with the Afghanistans?
Yeah. So
Afghanis?
I graduated the course and my unit was already deployed to Afghanistan.
Okay.
So I actually got a call while I was on leave, like in the middle of buying a house. And they're like, hey, you got to sign in, or, you're going to Afghanistan right away. So I was like, get right into it.
Did you still buy the house?
Yeah. So as soon as I closed on the house, signed in, and then a week later I was headed to Afghanistan.
Wow. All right. So do you want to tell us about one of your deployments? I would love to know what it's like doing that, because we hear a lot about, leaving Afghanistan, and not just leaving the equipment and the machinery and all that stuff behind, but also leaving behind a lot of the people that we worked with. And I love that this is what you did, so tell us, what's it like working with the Afghani, whoever, with the civilian population, the military population, people you're training up, tell us about that.
Yeah. It depends on who you were working with at the time.
Okay.
Sometimes you would get, if you were working directly with Afghan Special Forces, sometimes they can be highly motivated, like really, really solid. If you were working with Kandak or just like Afghan infantry, essentially, it can be a little hit and miss. You're kind of like holding information closely because you don't really know.
Yeah.
So in my experience, I worked with both, and it was good overall. We didn't have any big issues, but you could see that the competency was not there for the regular forces. Now we had NMRG, which is National Mine Reduction Group members, who are still Afghan, but a little bit more highly trained, that were attached to us, and we trust a little bit more. They're vetted a little bit more. But for the average, Afghan infantry member, it was very hard to get them to do what you wanted to do, or do what they knew needed to be done. A lot of times you have air cover overhead when you're going out on mission, so they just relied on that, which was something we saw coming, on the SF side, at least speaking for myself. We knew the Afghan war was going to draw down to an end at some point. And we pretty much foresaw, I'm sure both of you guys foresaw it too, the will to fight on the Taliban side was much more intense than the will to fight on the Afghan military side that we stood up.
Well, they have a purpose, right? They have a purpose to do it. And, a lot of the problem on the Afghan side was you guys fucking caused this problem. So now we're having to, you know what I mean? It's that was a lot of the issue that we saw too, was Like, you're the reason why we have to fight because you guys are here. And it's like, oh, fuck.
Right.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Like, we probably shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
That's got to be a wild feeling. Trying to work with guys, not knowing what level of trust you can even have with them or at all. Because if you think of like, let's use the Ranger side of it. Like if they're going in there and they're fighting, they know who their guys are because they're all wearing the same uniform. They know them and they're going out looking for combatants. Well, like you are like working with people that might be combatants in hiding. And
Right.
that's got to be nerve wracking, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things you're always somewhat on guard or aware of it, but you don't necessarily dwell on it. A lot of just, literally physical positioning. Like you're not going to put yourself in a position that's overly extended or in front of them if a firefight pops off or anything like that.
You're not doing any trust falls or anything.
No trust fall. Yeah. At that point in the war too, a lot of it was pretty deliberate. So, most of our village clearances and stuff like that, we would have them lead out. And then we would kind of be behind them pushing, directing traffic, things like that. So it was a lot of, we're going to have the regular Afghan military go with their engineers clearing ahead of them for IEDs. And then we have our NMRG go ahead of us clearing for IEDs, mark trails, and then we're going in. So at that point, like it's still dangerous. We still lost guys. But the focus was much more on putting the host nation's military at the tip of the spear, so to say, instead of us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you ever have any crossover then back to what you did at Night Stalker? Did you guys use drones and get to experience from that end?
Yeah, actually, I was talking to my buddy Jake, the one I was just telling you about. There was multiple missions where we had drones overhead, and it was really cool to kind of see the other side of it. Because it was, talking back to my, or going back to my story of being in Iraq, and I was like inside of the Tactical Operations Center, watching the Green Berets, conduct these missions on the screen. And I was like, I have that I'm on the sideline kind of feeling, like, you know what I mean? To walking through some of the villages doing like, clearance, and you look up and you can hear the drones or whatever, and you hear the chatter of the drones calling out what they're seeing and everything. And you're like, damn, this is crazy. A little bit different than, it's like kind of surreal. Because for me, a lot of Afghanistan, it felt like training. Like the Q course and training on a team actually does a really good job of preparing you for that environment. I always say it's like a stair step kind of thing.
Sure, I've heard that from multiple different guys too. So that's good that's like that.
Yeah, you get so conditioned to like patrolling and working in a team, communicating, things like that, that when I got to Afghanistan, I was like, this just feels like training, but now we got live rounds. You know what I mean? It feels like the Q course with live rounds. So it was kind of cool to be on that other side of it and experience it. But yeah, the drones were good. Not as the end user, the SF guys, us on the ground, they weren't like something we relied on as much. We would much rather have like an AC-130 or something like that, but they were good to have up there.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting to think like, we need air superiority, but what do we really prefer up there? Like, where do drones rank, when it comes to AC-130s or F-18s or an A-10 or, stuff like that? And were they kind of like lower on the list of what you'd prefer to have? Or
and it depends on where they're coming from. Ours were Army, and on the Army side, you can be E3 and be piloting a drone in Afghanistan. You know what I mean?
Wow.
You have to have a guy that's a little bit like an E5 at least, and then you can have a lower enlisted.
Wow.
So a lot of these guys aren't super experienced.
Sure.
Maybe they did some ranges and they did some training on what they're looking for and stuff like that. But we had a lot of issues with them kind of misidentifying stuff because they lack the experience of it. Or lack the experience of interpreting that information.
Marine drone pilots had to be pilots.
Yeah.
They had to be officers and pilots. Like you could be a warrant officer, I think, but you had to be a fucking officer and go through flight school and in order to fly a drone. That's crazy. They had E3. Yeah. I can't even imagine when I was in E3, I can't even imagine being fucking responsible for a drone.
That's
dumb. Don't do that.
Right. And on the Air Force side, I believe you do have to be an officer. And when I was in the 160th, it was very normal, lower enlisted guys flying. You have like a somewhat more senior guy who's in charge of it.
Yeah.
But as I got to the team side, I was like, you know what? I kind of wish there was somebody more experienced, at least the ones that supported us. Because there was some instances of like misidentification for sure.
Yeah. And the ramifications are real, because like, I think a lot of people that are listening that like were not in or didn't work in aviation in the military, play video games and stuff. It's like, yeah, cool. I want that drone up there. And of course you do, like you want it at your back, but if they misidentify something, like, what does that mean?
Right.
You could be the target.
Or you kill the wrong person.
Or you kill the wrong person. Or like, you do something that severely impacts your ability to, accomplish the mission or something like that. So
also depending on where the drone is coming out of and how the communication is coming. This is a problem they had in Benghazi too. Listen to all the guys that I just re-listened to all the interviews from Tonto and Oz and all those guys recently after Hillary got her, Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Yeah, crazy.
And so I just re-listened to all those interviews in honor of those guys that didn't make it out of Benghazi. And that was an issue they had out there was they had a drone overhead, but the drone was based out of, I think it was either Sigonella or out of Tripoli. And the communication had to go from the drone pilot back to DC through the Pentagon and then back to them. So it was like, they're like, hey, you guys have, and I think it was Oz was talking about the drone saying, hey, you guys have 100 guys coming up on it. He goes, yeah, we're already fucking engaged. Like they're already shooting at us. I think it was like a minimum of 6 minutes, and 6 minutes is a fucking long time.
Lifetime. Yeah.
Like, so, to the point of like, what would you rather have overhead? It's like, every single one of those guys was like, we wanted a gunship overhead. Yeah. We wanted F-16s to do a low fly. We wanted, and it's like
100%.
It'd be interesting, like we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, like where this goes, because imagine if you don't have to do that and you just have a guy, maybe he's even in like a little protective freaking thing that it's controlling it right there with you. Like you have your own dedicated drone, your own squadron of drones that you can just real time. Oh no, that's where we need to hit right there. You don't have to call it in. Right. Your guy that's just right there, like, I don't know, just got a VR headset on or something. It's like, just does it.
Yeah.
Like that'd be sick.
I think that'll happen.
Oh, for sure.
I think there'll be whole MOSs or military occupational specialties in the Army for FPV drones. Yeah. They already started fielding some smaller drones that, you have a little controller and a screen and they're thermal capable. So you can put them up and get a good idea, but they're small. They're not very fast. They're, super undetectable. You can't really see them, but they're not as effective as like throw up an FPV with that can fly 30, 40 miles per hour, go check something out real quick, whatever. So I think that'll be huge.
It'd be massive. Yeah. Because we have, the radio guy, like just think of like even like an old World War II movie or something. There's one guy with a big brick on his back for the radio. They can call in an airstrike or something. Well, like a guy like that, but he's actually controlling maybe a small fleet of drones or one drone or two drones or something. But they could even be interchanged out. Like they don't even have to be deployed from your backpack. Like it could be a good sized drone with a real payload on it, and just be out there just bombing and doing your own bombing runs and stuff. That'd be sick.
Yeah, at least get access to it and be able to communicate more effectively.
Yeah, because we need to be able to cut that time down.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, there's 100 guys coming. Yeah, we know.
Yeah, they're already here. Yeah, we fucking know. Yeah, do you hear? They're already all dead.
Listen.
Thanks.
Very aware. Very aware.
Dude, that's crazy. Well, good. I'm glad you got out of there and made it out. Because a lot of people don't, and it's a wild time, and all of us were in the military. My wife was Air Force, and I don't know. It's really interesting. We've talked about this a lot. How like would we go in again? Right now, I don't know. Probably not.
Right.
But I wanted to after high school because I didn't want to do any more schooling. I was a junior when 9/11 happened, and so it just kind of like. I didn't want to go to school. I was pissed off about that. Yeah. Like, cool, I'm going to join the Navy, for me. But for now, it's just kind of like, man, you just see, how the military is oftentimes just mismanaged and it's just used as a piece on a checkerboard. And it's like, what's the real purpose behind it? Do we really need to be having all these guys dying in their prime? And it's like, I probably wouldn't do it now, even though I still completely love and respect the military. And, I want them funded and taken care of, and VA, overly funded and all that stuff, but it's like, man, it's a different world now.
Yeah, I get it. And I was talking about this the other day too. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it because I obviously spent 10 years of my life in the military. I'm proud of my service in the military. I had a good time, all that good stuff. I have nothing but respect for those that raise their hand and want to volunteer and, serve inside of our military. But at the same time, it is grossly mismanaged. We have a lot of generals that, leave the service after 25, 30 years of time in service and then go immediately sit on a board at a company that directly profits from wars across the world. So there are a lot of it's really turned political. And it's not something that is immediately felt as like a lower enlisted guy. Obviously, like the quality of life and things like that are the things that matter most. Like, what do the barracks look like? What's my pay like?
Sure.
Am I getting, compensation, whatever, right?
Yeah,
Those are the things that
about
matter
what your
most.
barracks looks like. Go to join the Air Force.
Right. But I would say like when I got into special forces and I started asking questions and started talking to higher ups and having these more strategic conversations, it really kind of opened my eyes to the corruption, not only within the military and how leadership is groomed and selected, but also on the political side and what is going on and how the military is used as a political tool. So
yeah, we could start seeing that political shift right around. I got out in 2013, so probably right when you went in.
Yeah,
and that political shift started happening right around 2010, and it was slow at first, and then it was like this very apparent shift where a lot of the not higher level guys, but like that higher staff NCO level, they started getting forced out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, wait a minute, these are the good leadership is getting forced out. The lower level, some of the lower level officers that would have been great generals were getting forced out. And like, you just saw this thing start to happen, and I guess you would call it the landscape of it started to shift over, and it was like, oh man, like what's this going to look like in 10 years, 20 years? And we know what it looks like now is DEI training and fucking whatever they're doing now.
Yeah.
I got one more comment and question on that for you guys. It's like really just like the future of warfare, like how many soldiers we're going to need versus the technology that we have, because we're already talking about replacing pilots in jets. And as advanced weaponry from the air especially gets more, accurate and strategic and all that, you can make the case it's going to use less and less on the ground soldiers. And then as weapons get more crazy, the kind of war that we're on the brink of, all the time that we don't like to think about, like doesn't require any soldiers. It's just a button,
right?
So it's pretty interesting to see where this thing goes. But I think that's why it's like you were saying, it's more important to have our politics squared away, because that's really what drives the war.
Right.
Like we go to war for one reason that we think ends up being another reason, a political reason. So if we can get the reasons of when we choose to send people into harm's way, that's where we need to go, in my opinion. It's like, just be smarter about what the fuck we're doing. Do we actually need to go over here and fight? Or is there something that we can talk about,
Right.
Can we use like a strong military, which we should absolutely have and keep? Can we just use that as more of a deterrence instead of just going on the offense every freaking 5 years somewhere? You know?
Yeah. It's tough. Things are changing. Hopefully for the better in the coming years. We'll have to kind of wait and see how it plays out. But I'm hopeful that it will kind of change, and at least on the soldier side, which is what I'm most familiar with, we can fix a lot of the issues that are impacting it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if the whole world becomes the United States, we don't have anyone to fight.
That is crazy.
Yeah, cool. Hey, instead of fighting you, how about you just join us?
Hold on a second. It's a Pied Piper, the one world government, guys.
Oh, damn it. Yeah. We went all the way around the circles.
Yeah. All the memes that are going on are crazy.
Oh, crap. Okay, cool. So you're in for 10 years. So how many years were you Green Beret then?
5.
Okay, yeah. So 5 and 5. And so what made you want to get out then? Because you're about halfway to a retirement, right? What made you get out and become a civilian again?
Partially political, partially personal. I obviously went to Afghanistan. We lost some dudes. And then the way that ended really put a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
That was right around COVID. I was against the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
And, the whole forcing thing, it was kind of pissed me off because I was forced to get the COVID vaccine. They brought me in an office. They're like, you have 24 hours or we're starting your paperwork to kick you out. So I was like, well, I guess I'll go get the freaking shot so I don't get other than honorable.
Yeah.
I get the shot, and then 4 months later they rescind it. They're like, you don't need it. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So things like that started to accumulate. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get out. I eventually want to start a family. I had just met my now wife. So I was like, I'm going to get out. And then at the same time, I started getting the entrepreneurial bug. So at that time, started buying real estate, renting, things like that. So I knew I wanted to start a business when I got out. And you guys listen to like Alex Ramosi and those guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. So big Alex Ramosi fan. Yeah. Was reading all the freaking entrepreneurial books. And one of the things that stuck out to me the most is like, if you want to build something big in your lifetime, you only really get a few chances. So at that point, I was facing either get out and go start a business and raise a family and live in one spot, or I had 10 years in, so I had to go or indefinite. Essentially, I had to sign another 10-year contract if I wanted to stay in. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go try to build something big. So that was what ended up.
I think it's a good choice. Like for me, I only did 4 years in the Navy. But, when you're on a ship, I was on an aircraft carrier. While you're there, it's basically hell in a way. Like you feel like you're in prison, 6,000 guys. And like, imagine if like the three of us and like 5 other guys, if we were together 24/7, literally, that's what it's like. So like for anyone listening, just imagining waking up, going to chow with the same group of guys, going to work for 12 hours, going to the gym afterwards, eating again, standing in line for the shower, and then bumping into each other as you're getting ready for bed, and all right, go to sleep, you wake up the same day, you get in a fight with everybody. It kind of feels like you're in prison. So I didn't want to do that because, there's no way to, in my opinion, to have like a family, especially when you're deploying. Right. Like in the Navy, I would have basically deployed like probably every year, every 10 months, something like that, possibly forever. I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. Right. Like I want to have kids. I want to do more with my life, but looking back on it, you're like, man, that was some of the coolest shit I've ever done. Yeah. I literally floated around the planet from San Diego to Virginia, around the whole damn globe. Like, that's pretty cool, you know?
I was basically deployed for 6 years of my 8 years that I was in. Wow. So to different places. And I was on the ship for a while. And he's right. I was on a small carrier too. So it's even worse. We're on the oldest ship in the Navy, the Nassau. It's finally been decommissioned, I'm pretty sure. Luckily.
Hopefully they sunk it.
Hopefully they sunk that fucking thing. Yeah. But, trying to explain what life is like on a carrier, especially an old carrier like that, is like, it's almost impossible. Because I'm like, yeah, you wake up and there's poop water just kind of floating around in your berthing where you live. And they're like, no, they can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean they can't do that?
They can do whatever they want.
Like, what do you mean they can't do that? Like, no, they would never allow that. I'm like, who wouldn't? Like, what do you mean? 3 times a week, not joking, 3 times a week, there's this much shit and piss water just floating around in the berthing because somebody would shove a fucking, a t-shirt down the shitter or something stupid, or it's just old, the Nassau's old. Yeah. So like the shitters would back up, or you'd be taking a shower and poop water would start coming up from the drain, and then you have to play waffle stomp and stomp the shit, like back down through the drain hole and stuff. But, you start to explain stuff like that. And just like he was saying, being with the same people for that long. And then, on a ship in the berthing, I don't know how it was on the big carriers, but it's probably the same way in the berthing. There's only like this much room between the racks.
Right. Yeah.
So like this is this guy's bed right here, and he's got about this much room, right? And then this guy's bed is right here, and it's like, coffin racks. So you like, luckily I wasn't as big back then, or my chest would have hit the rack above me.
Oh my gosh.
So you just crawl in there, and then and it's one of those things that you try to explain it. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, that sounds stupid. And then, go wait in line for fucking food. And then,
it's like so asinine.
You have 1 week of good food, and then the food sucks until there's an on-rep. And then fucking, the water tastes like jet fuel because the fuel and the potable water is in the same tank because the water floats on top of the water floats on top of the fuel. And on the Nassau, the potable water tank and the fuel tank were the same tank. So like when you would get low on water, you'd start tasting jet fuel out of the fucking water thing. So it's just like, they can't do that.
Dude,
It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Shipboard life is insane, man. There was flesh-eating diseases. There were like little gangs sometimes. There was prostitution. Like
What?
it was basically prison.
Oh, yeah.
It was crazy.
That is insane.
But you're still getting up and shaving every day and being squared away with your uniform and everything. But there's all this craziness going around you too. Like it's
if your
crazy.
uniform doesn't look good, you get
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
But there's some crazy shit, man. Like one time somebody freaking stole my boots.
for no reason.
Like leather boots, you got to wear steel toe and everything. I worked on the flight deck, and you always put them on top of your locker, when you go to bed. So I get up one day and I'm getting dressed and freaking there's no boots up here. And I was like,
you can't get new boots.
So you look around and there were no size 13s on the ship. So they had to fly them out. So I had to wear tennis shoes for a couple days. So they flew boots. Imagine the cost of that.
Yeah.
We need to fly a pair of boots from who knows where into the middle of the Persian Gulf and land it on an aircraft carrier. Talk about Amazon delivery, The
dude that stole them was like 5'5".
Yeah, exactly.
Probably.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but my first trip to Afghanistan, I haven't thought about this in a long time. But my first trip to Afghanistan, I was drinking this water. I remember it was Kinley water. And I was drinking it because it had the Coca-Cola little thing on it. You get like big pallets of just bottled waters. And I was like 3 months in. My stomach the entire time was just wrecked. I had like bubble guts. I thought it was the food. I like kept trying to just change it up. I was like eating just bread and just like really normal stuff. And they sent out a memo like 3 months in. They're like, oh, by the way, all of these lot numbers of these pallets of water are contaminated with human feces. So I was just drinking that for months at a time. There's so much stuff in the military that it's hard to explain to people that haven't been there because you are literally just a number. Like, just deal with it, make way, however you do.
Yeah, my last trip to Afghanistan, we live right next to Poo Pond on Kandahar.
Oh yeah.
And when I tell people that, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, we live next to the shit pond with the poop fucking sprinkler in the middle and that aerates it. So, and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, there's no sewage.
Yeah.
Like there's 2,000 fucking people on this base. Where do you think all the poop goes? Goes into Poo Pond.
Yeah, there's no sewer.
It's like Fountain Hills with a poop pond.
Exactly.
Exactly. One more little comment about that. You mentioned unrep. So we used to have to it's called an underway replenishment, right? So we'd run out of food eventually and run out of fuel and weapons and all these things. And so the ship would keep moving, but we'd have another big ship come next to it. And they would, we'd hoist over pallets of stuff or we'd fly things over. Vert rep, it was called. Helicopters would pick up from one back of the ship, big pallets of weapons and bring them over and replenish that way. But as we're throwing all these boxes down, everyone had to work those things. You'd get towards the end and you'd get this box and it would say, not for human consumption, for institution or military use only. And be like, the hell is this?
That's the food.
And you're throwing it down because at first you're throwing down, you're throwing, eggs and produce and bread and all this stuff. And then you get to that was what I called meat pellets. It basically looked like cocoa pebbles, but it was some unidentified meat. Because every once in a while we would run out of the good food and we'd go to those. Those were our rations.
Wow.
But it was not for human consumption unless you're in the military.
Yep.
You just rehydrate it. It's like cereal.
Yeah. So I had a bottle of a Chipotle Tabasco sauce that I basically just, took from somewhere and I kept it with me. So when if we were all together, we'd go sit at our table, I'd pull it out, we'd all use it and stick it back in my pocket.
This is literally like prison.
Just like prison. Because all there was to eat when when the rations got down was rice and meat pellets. That's it. Mm-hmm. And then you'd wake up one day, like if you do another unrep, sometimes like I was on the opposite shift, I wouldn't, have to work it. But you'd wake up and you go down and there's eggs and peanut butter ice cream and lobster tail and chicken and waffles and all this shit. And it's like, can we just get sandwiches like all the time maybe? So we don't have to go to not for human consumption and then the next day have a lobster tail. I don't give a fuck about a lobster tail. I'm floating around an aircraft carrier. Just give me a ham sandwich.
Yep. Yeah. We always knew when there was an on-rep if we didn't work it because it was chicken cordon bleu.
Chicken cordon bleu.
Chicken
absolutely.
Cordon bleu. That was the fucking...
Which is great when you had it.
Yeah. I have a brother who he spent like 6 years of his life in prison. And as I was going through the military, I would tell him what I'm doing and stuff like that. This is after he was out. And a lot of times he was like, dude, that is worse than prison.
Yeah, because you have to work.
Yeah.
In prison, I guess you just kind of hang out and do whatever you do. But yeah, you also have to do shit you don't want to do in the military.
Right.
We got some mail. This was on that trip on the Nassau. We broke the Navy's record for consecutive days at sea on the Nassau that year because we went down to Haiti when the shit went down in Haiti in whatever it was, 2009, I think it was, the earthquake that happened down there. And then we went directly from Haiti, didn't stop anywhere, went from Haiti through the Straits of Gibraltar, through the Panama Canal, all the way to the Gulf of Aden to start running missions into wherever the fuck, And so it was 186 days, I think, we were at sea. So without getting off the ship. And that was like broke the Navy's record at that point. So we got mail at some point. I think we got mail when we were going through the Panama Canal. It was right before. I think we were waiting to go through the Panama Canal. So we got mail. And my brother had sent me a big box of Arby's sauce, like in the packets. So we had fucking Arby's sauce. And every time I'd open one of those up, you'd see 3 or 4 people in the chow hall go,
what is that?
Like they could smell it, And I was selling them and trading them for stuff. And
that is hilarious.
That is funny. So for me, it was like, I need to get out because I want to do stuff. Yeah. I did go to Lockheed for 10 years, which is kind of a sidetrack. I thought I was going to go to college and then, probably have a family and all that. So it took me longer to get into my own business. But for you were like, hey, I want to get out and go do my own thing. You kind of knew that right away.
Yeah.
Did you know what you wanted to do?
Not really. No.
Okay.
Kind of took some bumping around and it was a rough start, but finally figured it out. So yeah, I didn't really have an idea of what business I wanted to do. I honestly, I've always been obsessed with fitness. I've always been someone that trains and learns and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I had never been exposed to the fitness industry. So I thought, it was just like working at a gym from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, but, I wanted some freedom and stuff like that. So as I progressed, started reading things like Alex Ramosi and following a lot more entrepreneurial minded guys, just slowly learned and implemented, and it became what it is today.
Yeah. So tell us about Infinite Grit. So I've read it, but I'd love to hear it from you. Like you have a pretty great niche to help guys that want to do kind of what you used to do, right?
Yeah. So we focus on strength and conditioning coaching for tactical athletes, whether it's military, law enforcement, firefighter, whatever.
Yep.
And we do so by having our custom app and delivering the programs and things like that. We have myself, 2 other Green Berets who I served with. One of them was actually my senior on the team. And then we have a strength and conditioning coach who is the current strength coach for 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, the Rangers.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. And then he worked with a couple NFL teams prior to that. So
that's awesome.
Our goal with Infinite Grit is to provide the real world experience, kind of our experience as Green Berets. Eventually we'll bring on other tactical athletes, firefighters, law enforcement guys, and combine that with kind of the science-backed strength and conditioning to provide both the mentorship and the step-by-step blueprint to get your physical performance to where it needs to be to go do these things.
That's really important because, a lot of times people, like if somebody didn't know, they just think, I just need to be big and strong. And it's like, some of this stuff, it goes a lot more into the conditioning side.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to be strong, but you also have to be able to move your own body. You have to be able to move in weird ways. You have to be able to move in, different movement patterns effectively and efficiently and, be able to sustain, exercise for certain amounts of time. And so it's like, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The biggest thing is just getting guys to manage fatigue a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm sure all of us can relate to this. You're a young 18, 20, 22-year-old joining the military and you just think that you have to go and destroy yourself with every workout. So one thing we really harp on is training smart and training for long-term performance. Mm-hmm. So you can go in there and you can burn yourself out in 90 days, maybe make some short-term progress, likely get hurt, but how long are you going to be able to sustain that?
Yeah.
We focus on getting through the initial pipeline, obviously, but then actually being able to serve on a team without a lot of those injuries. Mm-hmm. A lot of what we talk about is based on like everything I did wrong when I was, 20 years old, training up for selection, things like that.
For sure. Yeah, it's good because like you both are saying, like a lot of guys think, I just need to be big. I need to be strong. It's like, no, you actually need to be able to like carry extra weight for a long period of time, most likely.
Yeah.
You need to have a lot of stamina under duress. Your body needs to be like bulletproof kind of,
That fatigue management too that's really important.
Yeah.
Like being able to know when, like where that threshold is and be able to like stay right along that threshold for a long period of time.
Right.
Like,
yeah. And you look at the operations, like even I did on a team in Afghanistan, if we're doing a helicopter insertion, we land the helicopter 2 to 3K away from the objective. You're carrying 90 to 110 pounds of gear. You walk slowly to that objective, spend all night clearing it. You're on the ground for 8 hours until the sun comes up. After you clear the objective, then you move back to another helicopter landing zone and be picked up. So if you look at the physical requirements of it, you got to carry heavy weight for a slow to moderate pace for multiple hours at a time without setting it down over uneven terrain. So a lot of it is the strength to actually be able to carry the weight, the endurance capacity to be able to recover as you're doing it, and then the durability to make sure you don't, hyperextend your knee as you're jumping over a wadi or whatever.
Right.
And also being able to manage your energy system too during that whole thing without having to eat, just all the time and all that stuff. A lot of these guys are like, oh, I eat every 2 hours. And it's like, you're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah. You're already pretty heavy.
Yeah. Jocko was talking about this on a podcast with somebody because they were asking him how he got into fasting. And he goes, I got into fasting in Iraq. It's like, so we go out for 3 or 4 days and we're not going to eat. He's like, so I wouldn't eat. He's like, I knew what to eat before that. And I knew what made me feel good when we got back and what I could eat when I got back. He's like, and that's, kind of how I got into it. It's like, yeah, that's fucking real. It's reality,
Man, that's a great point because, at least the way my body operates, I eat kind of pretty often, like all the time. And going out there, and if you're like, okay, sure, maybe once you can do it, you can get away with it if you don't eat for a couple of days. But like, if you're like in a regular regimen of doing that, and you're constantly away from regular food, you're relying on quick eats or not eating a lot, but you're still under a lot of physical load. Like that does take a lot of physical and mental training.
Dude, imagine doing True North without food.
It'd be insane.
Like we have a retreat that we do every quarter, and we're doing it next week. I think we're going up the 12th.
Nice,
right?
Yeah, next week.
It's on the 15th, and it's 4 days of just a lot of stuff, hikes and a lot of stuff, and it's basically about the length of something like that is like, it's 4 days. And
imagine not eating.
Luckily we have chefs that are cooking farm to table food day, like the whole day and all that stuff. So it's like, that's not a problem, but it's like, man, just imagine something like that. Like, maybe it's something we could do at some point is do a 2 or 3 day thing where
you could do it and let me know how it goes.
I will do it.
But you're out there for months and even prior to missions, it's not like you're eating high quality food.
Right.
So
right.
CJ, who he's a coach on our team quality. And he was much more experienced Green Beret than me on my team. He was talking about one of his deployments and he was sitting in the PAX terminal, which is where it's like the civilian the military style of like just an airport.
Yeah.
And he was waiting for a flight to pick him up and he was like sitting on this chair and it's like mid deployment, got beard. He's like lost like 30 pounds. He's looking real weak, running missions every 4 days or whatever. And there was this guy sitting in front of him who was like this jacked dude. And he was like wearing a kit and everything. And he gets up and walks away, and the girl that was next to CJ was like, he's probably special forces. Meanwhile, CJ's just here. He's like,
yeah, probably.
Yeah. He's a drone operator.
He's a new guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's probably working, in an office and eats well and works out every day. While CJ's out on a camp just like starving for food. So
that is pretty funny. People's perception of things like, oh, he must be a special forces guy. No, he probably has an office job.
Yeah. Special forces guys are looking rough these days. 4 months into a deployment.
So that's got to be pretty cool, coaching that kind of community. Like what's your favorite part about working specifically with people that are doing what, you're helping them get ready for?
The motivation, man. These guys are hungry. I always joke that a lot of coaches have trouble getting their guys to go to the gym. I have trouble keeping my guys out of the gym because they just want to go after it so much. So it is really cool to see that level of motivation. And it kind of brings me back to like when I was training up for that stuff.
Yeah.
Because to even succeed in that environment, like you have to really freaking want it, and it has to be demonstrated on a daily basis. So when I see these guys getting after it and I like feel their excitement, I kind of like get excited about it too. I'm like, yeah, dude, you're gonna freaking crush it. So it's really fun to coach guys like that are really ready to learn and ready to implement everything that you teach them.
Dude, that sounds kind of fun, actually. You're exactly right. A lot of the times it's, getting people out of a rut, convincing them to keep going or do the right thing. But when you have someone that's like, nope, I'm going to do everything you say times 2. It's
exactly.
Like, no, actually don't do that. Freaking slow down,
90%
That's pretty interesting.
Of the normal population because I worked at National Personal Training Institute. I taught for a couple of years and wrote curriculum for them and stuff like that. And so, I had classes full of trainers or wannabe trainers come through all the time. And that was something that I told them, like, listen, most of the people that you work with aren't going to be motivated. And most of your job is going to be to motivate and inspire them. Like, the work is the work and the training is the training. And listen, you could give somebody, whatever you give them, as long as they do it, they're probably going to see result. Right. I was like, most of this is you going to be providing them with and letting them borrow your confidence for them. Right. And that's most of it. And that's where a lot of, especially trainers now that, that come out and want to have a big online presence and all this stuff. And it's like, that's most of your job, is providing your confidence in them and constantly giving them that. And it's tough. It's really tough working with people that aren't motivated, because it's like, well, you have the plan, you have the, I gave you all the things that you need, but like, I can't give you motivation. That's hard. It's really hard to do. So it's an awesome thing to have, like, your niche of clients are like motivated. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that is really neat. And I'm sure you said as you expand and get more like in the first responders and stuff, you'll probably start to see the opposite there. But I think a lot of these guys, especially the younger guys that are going for special forces, like they're just getting after it.
Yeah. And we have guys, we have like federal agents and stuff who are most of the guys that we work with, they might be in law enforcement already, or they might be a federal agent already. And they're looking to get into kind of like the next level. So like, special operations or SWAT or whatever it is. So, we're not going to turn someone away if they're like, hey, I needed some additional accountability. We'll help them through it. But I would say about 90% of our guys are like, feed me.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's super cool. What a cool niche of people to work with. You mentioned earlier, you said something. Did you have to learn another language?
I did, yeah.
Because I almost said it in the moment, but I was like, you kind of breezed over it. I was like, I picked up my language or something. So that was a requirement to get into Green Beret, or to get into what?
Yeah, for special forces.
You have to learn another language?
Yes. I learned Russian, and special forces is built by different groups. So each group within special forces is focused on a region of the world. I went to 10th group, which is Eastern Europe. So we learn primarily Russian, but we have groups focused on Asia, South America, whatever, Africa.
What do they speak in Afghanistan?
Farsi.
Yeah. Did you ever pick up any of that?
Only 2 words: infajar and harakat. Infajar is explosion, so that's where we'd be like, infajar is that like an IED, or harakat is like, let's go.
Oh man, yeah, 2 pretty important words.
Farsi is also super tribal too, so all these different tribes have different dialects and different shit, and it's like, you sit in the room and listen to 3 different tribes talk to each other, and you're like, oh man. Oh boy. Yeah.
Man, I mean, that's got to be pretty interesting too, to pick that up. But so what do you think about, knowing Russian? Do you speak it pretty well?
Да, я говорю по-русски довольно хорошо.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, I speak it. I was a nerd for it. That's one of the reasons why I chose to go special forces, like Army Special Forces, over another organization, because I've always loved languages, and I really wanted that 6 months of dedicated language learning. So the entire time I was in special forces, I was kind of like that nerdy dude that was like listening to Russian podcasts on my way to work and stuff like that. So
are you still doing that now? And are you able to, I would imagine, probably pick up some more intel and information on what's going on over there now?
I wouldn't say like more info. I would say like I can kind of see both of the sides, because you can see like the raw material that's being put out in Russian and stuff like that. Today I had a call with a Ukrainian guy who's training up for their special forces. So But I wouldn't say like I have privy to information just from being able to speak Russian.
But yeah, I mean, even just like maybe watching some Russian news, I think it'd be fascinating to see like, what do they say about what's going on? Like, what is happening? You know?
Most of the time you watch, I'll watch Russian news, and I'll watch it for the language practice. Yeah. And a lot of times I'm like, listen to it. I'm like, this is straight propaganda.
Oh yeah.
So, you definitely kind of see what it makes. It puts it into perspective, like what they're being fed. Because just like in the US, how there's people who only watch mainstream media and they wholeheartedly believe mainstream media, there exists the same population in Russia that only watches their mainstream media. So like there's a population in Russia that doesn't think about the war the same way we do. It's completely different perspective based on the information they've been fed, and they think they're saving the freaking
There's
world.
people in this building that think that same way, to your point. You know what I mean? There's people in this building that only watch CNN, and it's like, they think very specific down a certain line, and they can't think for themselves because they're just fed this propaganda. And it's like,
yeah. I remember Tucker Carlson was getting some shit for interviewing Putin, and I'm like, no, I want to hear what he has to say. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
like it doesn't mean that I'm going to believe everything or anything, but like I want more information, not less.
Exactly.
I don't believe everything that comes out of our president's mouth either.
You know what I mean? Like
very little actually. But like the fact. I think, I didn't really have an opinion on Tucker Carlson. But once he started doing that and being a lot more outspoken after he left Fox, I was like, okay, I can kind of get behind this guy.
Yeah.
But I think it was so important to have that conversation with Putin. Is Putin a master of manipulating information and speaking on camera? So he puts out specific, propaganda.
Fucking KGB.
He's anybody that says Putin is an idiot is crazy.
Right.
Putin's very smart.
Right.
But the fact that the US, since the war has started, has not communicated directly with Putin that's crazy to me.
Fucking insane.
Well, I mean, there's zero chance of ending it if we're not communicating with him.
Exactly.
So like,
that goes into the question, who doesn't want it to end? So
exactly. Yeah. We talk about how it got started. There were opportunities for it to not even start or to end right away in the beginning. And we just kind of,
Boris Johnson messed up the negotiations that were already taking place. Yeah.
To the point too, like on the news, like if Trump called Putin, the news would spin that as like, he's talking to the enemy. And it's like, you're an idiot. You guys are all idiots. We need to talk to these fucking people. And it's like, probably like he said, all of this could have been avoided if pick up the phone and call him.
Yeah. And even if Putin is a master manipulator, which I'm sure he is, like you said, he is a brilliant person. Like, okay, well, let's just keep him talking anyway. Then just analyze what he's saying. Like just the more information, the better. So I think we should be on the phone all the freaking time.
It's a people game.
It really is.
It doesn't matter if it's I kind of picture it like this, like every organization, Earn It All, the US, United States, it's an organization and we view it as this like brand type of thing, but it's just a collection of people.
Right.
And if there is a divide between the people and a refusal to communicate, then of course there's going to be issues. I think it's crazy that we wouldn't communicate with an enemy. We can call them an enemy. We can know that they have their interests in mind and we have our interests in mind, but the conversation needs to take place with another power that has nuclear weapons or has, interests in the same region. Like it just blows my mind that
100%.
Yeah. And when you look back in hindsight and you look at all the information and just look at this information specifically where it's like Putin was like, hey, I'm going to defend myself if UN gets any closer. And they got closer. And he's like, okay, hey, I'm going to defend myself if UN gets any closer. Nobody's talking to me from the United States. So I don't know. UN fucking just keeps getting closer. They keep getting closer. They keep getting closer. And it's like just that information alone is like, yeah, you should probably call and be like, hey, we're not telling the UN to do that. So let's go talk to the UN and find out why they're doing that or whatever. Right. You know what I mean? Just at a very surface level, like it's so stupid. Like, of course you need to talk to the enemy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So one more question for you. I always ask something kind of like this for our people listening. You being, who you are after now learning everything from you, but especially with your special forces background, coming out, being an entrepreneur, being a coach, about to be a father and all this, like what is one thing you could tell people listening that maybe feel like they're not where they want to be yet? And they're not sure that they even have what it takes to get to the next level. We always tell them, earn it, and there's a protocol and a process behind it. But from your perspective, what do people need to really pay attention to? It's kind of like open-ended question in themselves to be able to earn the next level.
Yeah, two things. First is start taking action. I think a lot of times we have all of these big ideas and these big dreams and these big aspirations, but it's never the perfect time. So take action. As you take the first step, you identify or you encounter specific challenges. Then you seek specific information to overcome those challenges. Apply it, repeat, continue the process, and you will grow.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes into another point. Like, there's so many people that have these big dreams, and I was one of them. You know what I mean? Like, I have dragged my feet. I'm not freaking perfect. But you procrastinate on them, or you just read books on it. You just kind of dabble into information, but that information is not usable until you identify specific challenges in which you can actually implement it.
Yeah.
So start taking action. Look for challenges, seek specific information to overcome those challenges, and continue making progress. In addition to that, I've kind of changed my mindset. I'm a very competitive person, so I like to compete. But now I know that I can use my competitiveness as a source of motivation, not as a source of like, I win, right? So my winning is to continue playing the game. So I look at everything on a very long-term horizon now, even with Infinite Grit. I don't, we have goals on the yearly basis and things like that. But my goal for Infinite Grit in 10, 15 years is to keep playing the game and to keep growing and encountering challenges and expanding our reach and everything like that. So, if you start taking action, encounter the challenges, overcome them, and take a long-term horizon, there's really nothing that you can't accomplish.
Dude, I love that. And all the information to contact you is going to be wherever someone's listening, it's down below. So your website for Infinite Grit, your personal Instagram and all that kind of stuff, you can put whatever you want in there. Dude, I really appreciate you coming in here and talking with us. I really enjoyed this conversation. This is cool.
It was a fun one, man.
Yeah, it was good.
Appreciate you guys having me on. It was great to finally meet you.
For sure. And dude, wish you all the best with Infinite Grit and everything you guys are doing. Keeping our soldiers ready to go and ready to go to the next level. So keep up the good work, man.
Yeah, keep inspiring, keep doing your thing, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, likewise. All right, brother. Cheers.